Yep. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear? Christy and I are going to be going back and forth quite a bit, so we're not going to use the mic. So hopefully you can hear us. If we get too quiet, just give a shout and let us know. But thanks for coming today. This is a great turnout. We are really, really excited to share with you some of the things that we've been working on in terms of integers and how awesome integers are and how we're just going to change the way you think about integers today. That's our
very modest proposal.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know at the end how we do. But I'm going to turn it over to Christy now, and she's going to get started.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming. We have handouts, so if you don't have one, just raise your hand and Aaron will come hand you one quick. But we'll talk some of those things through it, and you'll see on one side there should be a URL and a QR code. So if you want, you can follow along on these Google Slides, or you can look at them later. And there's also a website we have, a Google site that, all right, we're just going to apologize in advance. It's a terrible mess. It's on the list. Things to clean up. But it does have all the activities and things on it, including the ones on the handout that you can download or use in your classroom. So they are there available to you. All right, so we would like to start. We're going to talk about negative numbers, and we just wanted to think about, when you think about negative numbers, what do you imagine? What images come to mind? So just take a second, and you can tell your neighbor or your notebook, or if you don't feel like making friends today, that's all right. You can just look down. But if you want to make friends, introduce yourself and talk a little bit for just a minute about what do you think about when you think of negative numbers? What do you think? I'm not going to be able to, though. We're just going to need to.
Really?
But yeah, All right, we'll catch up after. Yeah. Are you ready to eat? Yeah. This is the turning time. Okay. So if we had longer time, we would love to hear all the ideas you had here. Right now, we're going to tell you just some of the ways, both that I heard sort of as I walked up and down a little bit. I can hear some of these ideas coming out, but also we've been out, we've talked with kids, and we've talked with teachers, and there's a few stories and models and pictures people have that come up pretty often. So we wanted to start out by telling you a little bit about those. Can you hear me in the back? Is that okay? Sorry, people in the front, I'm shouting at you. Okay, so the first one that comes out a lot, this comes out a lot with people as they think about being in debt. So you have a bicycle, you want to buy it, it's a pretty good price, only $88, but you only have $22. So you borrow some money from your friend or from your credit card, and that money that you owe for buying that bike, that's a negative number. You're in debt for that. So pretty common idea. Another one that's pretty related to that, comes out a lot, is the idea of owing, needing, borrowing, missing objects. So like, I want to make an apple pie, and it calls for 5 apples, but I only have 3 apples. So I go to my neighbor and I say, hey, can I borrow 2 apples? Which I'm really not going to give back, maybe in the form of pie. But I borrow those 2 apples, so they're apples I don't have but I need. Or maybe I say to my friend, hey, can you do this for me? I'll pay you in apples. I'll pay 5 apples, but I only have 3, so now I owe you 2. This idea of owing, needing, borrowing something is, when we ask kids about what do they picture, by far, this is the most common type of story they tell us. For kids, this is a huge, like the overwhelming majority of stories they tell us are about something we borrow, need, have some missing sort of object. One that comes out a lot, especially with teachers, kids don't say this quite as often, but teachers is one of the most common ones to get. And in fact, when I walked down, it was the word I heard walking down. Temperature. It's really cold here, negative numbers, that like comes out a lot. And the last one is an idea that you might not have seen in this exact way, but piles and holes. But it fits with a picture a lot of people have in their mind around integers, which is, so like you have a pile of dirt and a hole in the ground, and each pile sort of perfectly fills in a hole. And that notion of sort of a hole in the ground being a negative amount that you have to fill in with something, a lot of people have that picture in their mind of negative numbers being like a hole. And it even fits with our language. We talk about a negative amount as like, I'm in the hole. I have to spend, I need more money. I'm in the hole right now. So all of these models right here, something they have in common is this idea that you could sort of keep going, counting down past 0. So you could go like 3, 2, 1, 0, and then that floor could sort of open up, and you could kind of keep going down. -1, -2, -3. And knowing what we know now, like that we accept negative numbers as numbers, this is a pretty useful idea that we like. Oh yeah, I can kind of see how you could kind of keep that pattern going and keep going backwards past 0, and how those things might be sort of kind of like the whole numbers that we know. Something that's a limitation to all of these though, and that's what we really want to talk about today, is they're really all missing some of the most important characteristics of the integers. So some of the things that make integers numbers that historically were the reason that people said, hey, yeah, let's call these a number, all of these models are really missing that idea in some important ways. And that's what we want to talk to you about. So what we want to do today is we want to talk to you a little bit about a model we really like, but also about what kind of conversations do you really want to have with kids about integers. And our, like Aaron said, we would like to transform the way you think of it. But we really want you to be thinking about, we feel like you should be thinking about integers differently than whole numbers, and we really want kids to do that too. So that's our goal. And all right, so Aaron, you want to tell us about a model we do like?
Sure. So a model that we've been working with for a while that we really like, we call floats and anchors. And the floats and anchors situation is basically built around a boat which is floating next to a dock. And the boat with nothing in it, with no cargo in it, floats at sea level. So you can see the line right there is pointing, it's floating at sea level. And there's a couple things we can do to this boat. We can add a float to the boat. And if you take a float and you put it in the boat, it's going to make the boat rise up a little bit, right? So that makes the boat lift up. We can also take that same float and we can take it back out. Well, if we take the float out, it's going to make the boat sink back down a little bit. The other thing we could do is we could add an anchor, something heavy, something, some weight. So if you add an anchor, the anchor has the effect of making the boat sink down a little bit. And the same thing's true if we take that anchor out, the boat's going to rise back up. All right? So that's the basic premise. It's a pretty simple model, but we're going to show you today how we use it and how we think it can be really helpful for helping kids think about integers in a new way, helping kids think about integers as integers and not just like a new form of whole number, right? That's sort of where we're going. And the last thing about this model is what happens if you take a float and you take an anchor at the same time and you put both of those in the boat? Well, both of them, a float makes it go up one, an anchor makes it go down one, so they have opposite effects. They're going to balance each other out, and we're going to end up right back at sea level. All right, so that's the basic premise of the model here. So, Christy, you seemed really excited about integers and why they were important. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's so special about integers?
All right, so you're going to prepare yourself for this, because this is the moment. All right.
Ready.
All right, so what is so special about integers? It is, the wrong direction. The additive inverse. A number and its opposite together have a value of 0.
That's it?
Yeah, okay, Aaron. A number, like 3 floats and 3 anchors, like together, you can have those things together, and that's 0.
Okay.
Aaron?
I'm not blown away.
This is the expression that I feel like you should have when I'm telling you about how I'm transforming your mathematical life right now. Okay, first of all, I think that gifts should be used to sell integers. I think that they'll go over really well with your 6th and 7th graders. And also, this is really transformative.
Yes.
So shocked kitty moment. What's so great about the additive inverse? All right, so here's the thing. Whole numbers, they count things. They're really good at counting things. You can have 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples, 4 apples, and you can keep going like this, and they can keep going forever. This is a really big idea. Another really cool thing about whole numbers is that it works to count apples, it works to count pencils, and this idea of like if you've got 4 apples or 4 pencils, something they have in common is that you can like draw lines between them. You can do this sort of one-to-one correspondence, and that thing that they have in common is like 4-ness. That's 4. And in whole numbers, like they all have this unique representation. 4 fingers and 4 dragons and 4 pencils and 4 apples and 4 ideas even. All those things have something in common, and that's what 4 is. But the integers are different than that. So the integers count opposites. That's that additive inverse idea. A number and its opposite together have a value of 0. So in the integers, we can still count things. So we can have 1 float and 2 floats and 3 floats, or 1 acre and 2 acres and 3 acres. But those things have an opposite. So they're really signed values. Like they have this really is a positive one, and it relates to something that's a negative one. So the whole numbers, we don't need the integers to talk about counts of apples, because the whole numbers do that really, really well. They were perfectly adequate for this. What the integers do really well is they talk about opposites. That's their thing. Integers really are about opposites. And so we don't really need the integers to do something that whole numbers do perfectly well, including talking about missing things. So if I want to make that pie, but this takes 4 apples and I only have 3, I can use whole numbers to talk about those 3 I have, and I can use a whole number to talk about that one that's missing. And that's a part to a whole relationship, and the 4 would be the number I want. Whole numbers do that job perfectly fine. Opposites are really what integers are about, and it's what they're going to do really, really well. And there's no such thing as an opposite apple. And there's no such thing as an opposite for most things. So figuring out what, sorry, I want to see what my next slide was. So figuring out what kind of real world things are going to work with integers means you really should be thinking about what kind of things have opposites. And most things don't. The whole numbers, they are fantastic at counting things in the real world. And the integers are fantastic at talking about opposites. But that's a limitation. Even though they're going to really transform and make a lot of power for you mathematically, they are going to limit the number of real world contexts that are going to really make sense when you talk about integers. So let's talk a little bit about some of those whole number understandings that students bring when they start thinking about integers. This is a student story from a 6th grader writing about apples. So Morgan has 3 apples and gives away 4. How many does she have? She has -1 apples. This is a pretty common story we get, and it really relates to things students know about whole numbers.
Okay, so I think I get what you're saying, Christy. You're saying that since the whole numbers, they count things, we've got apples, those are things that they can count, and the -1 apple is really just counting the same kind of apple. It's just one, maybe it's like, I have 3 apples and then you have 1. That's the -1, but it's still an apple. It's still a thing that I count. And these numbers, they can be related to real-world objects like apples and things like that. That makes sense to me.
And we see students doing this a lot. When we ask students to make sense of it, this is why we think we get a lot of those owing, needing, borrowing stories. They're bringing all that smart information they have from all those years of elementary school about, what numbers do. They count things, and you can write a story about anything. And that is so true with whole numbers. And integers don't work the same way. So this works okay, this 3 minus 4 for kids when it's 3 minus 4. It really falls apart, though, when they try to subtract negatives. So this one says 3 minus -5 equals -2, if you can't see it. It says Sally gets 5 apples. Then someone takes 3 apples, and you get 2. And you can see that the student's kind of thinking about this really as 5 minus 3 equals 2. But they're trying to bring in these ideas of what they know about subtraction as takeaway, about whole numbers, about how do I make sense of this. But they're having a hard time figuring out how does that relate to what integers are. Here's another story, one of our favorites. A scientist has 3 snakes, and he gives away -5 snakes. So he gets 5 snakes, and now he has 8 snakes. So this student obviously knows that the answer here is 8, and is trying to find a way to talk about how did that subtracting and that negative thing turn into addition. Well, there's this thing where when you take away negative snakes, and they just sort of turn into snakes. And our goal here is really to have kids have a better sense of what's going on. And we really can have a better sense of what integers are if we embrace and really talk about integers for what's important, that opposite idea, not snakes and negative snakes. Let's go with this one here. Another one here, and this is pretty common what we see when they do that negative, is actually they'll say things like 3 minus -5 is actually equal to -8. It's one of the most common answers we get to this question, far, far exceeding the number of students who will say +8 to this. Like Jack has 3 marbles, he owes 5 to his sister, but he only has 3. So like you owe something, and they're trying to make sense of this idea. Like, how could you have more? And the other thing they're bringing in here is this idea that whole numbers subtracting always makes smaller. If you take stuff out, that pile gets smaller and smaller. And also, if you imagine integers as sort of that, it opens up, like you can just keep going down. So those are smaller than whole numbers. So if you take something that gets smaller and you do something that's small, like, shouldn't it just get smaller? Lots and lots of kids will say that to us. And I think that that's a really smart idea from them as they're trying to make sense of how does this stuff work. But we know that the answer is actually 8, and helping them sort that out is going to mean we really need to take on integers. So the last one really quickly that students do pretty often is they talk about, and I think is really smart, is they talk about 0 being the smallest element. So the student says, I have 3 fish, my friend wants 5, how many fishies do I have now? -2 or 0. Do you think is so smart? Whole numbers, a big characteristic of them is you can run out. You can run out of apples. You can run out of fish. That's the thing, you can run out of them. And the logical answer to this, you give your friend those 3 fish and you don't have any more fish. I think this really shows a student who's really thinking about this. Issue here is that they're trying to tell a whole number story. They're trying to tell integers, but it's really a whole number story. And they don't match up very well. And so you end up with these really ridiculous situations. Because here's the thing. Morgan having 3 apples and giving away 4 is literally something that could never happen. That's an impossible situation. It is not a problem that the world needed math to solve. The world did not need math to solve giving away something that doesn't exist. This was not a problem. And so if we're going to try to sell kids on integers being awesome and great and powerful, telling them that the stories that are problems that no one would ever have to solve is not the most compelling argument we could make. But it does mean that we're going to have to help them sort out what integers are all about and how to talk to them about it and how to make sense of what's changed when you go from whole numbers to integers. Why did the mathematical community decide that we need a new set of numbers? It's not because they needed to solve that problem, right? That is not a real problem. So, all right. So, are you ready to hear about how this transforms things?
I am ready. Lay it on me.
All right, I want a more excited cat reaction, okay? All right, so here's the thing. So the first thing it changes. In the whole numbers, 0 is always nothing, right? Like, if you have 0, it means there's nothing there. And it means that when you say things like math facts for early kids, where you're like, what's 3 plus 0? They're like, 3? It's not that interesting. That problem gets to be really interesting when you get to the integers, because 0 has many different representations. Now 0 can be +1 and -1, or +6 and -6, or +100 and -100. All of those things are 0, and that is really, really a big change.
I think I get it. Okay, so you're saying we've got this float and we've got this anchor, and they come together and they cancel each other out, and they become 0. They just annihilate, and we're left with nothing, right? Is that what you're saying?
Aaron?
What?
No. All right. That is not what I said. That idea that those come together and they cancel each other out and they go away, that's a whole number idea of 0. That 0 is nothing. The thing that's transformative is that all of these things are 0 right now. It doesn't have to go away to be 0. It is 0. And that is like, when you tell kids this, like 0's not nothing anymore, they are like, what? Also Neil Patrick Harris, right? Okay, so, but they are. They're like, no. They're perfectly happy when you talk about 0 pairs canceling each other out and going away, because that fits with their whole number idea of 0. 0 cancels out and goes away. But when you need to put those 0 pairs in, and you're like, hey, we're going to add in 0, and it's going to be this whole pile, right? They look at you like you have lost your mind. Because that is not 0 to them. 0 is nothing. You have changed what 0 is. And you probably should tell kids that, because it's really big. And realize they probably need some like time to process it and make it. So I will tell you, when I do this with students, I tell them, I have just changed your life today, and if I don't get some parents calling me and telling me how much I have transformed your life right now, I'm going to be really sad. Your life has changed, folks. Okay, sales pitch. All right, so Aaron, you want to tell us about what can we do to help kids with this?
Right. So we have this idea of representing 0 in lots of different ways. That 0 is no longer just nothing. It can be represented with lots of different situations. So we can use our floats and anchors model to help with this. And one activity that we do with kids is this what's behind the box activity, right? So we put a picture up like this and we say, what could possibly be behind the box? And we ask kids to answer this. Now, we found when we first did this, we actually had nothing behind the box. Not nothing, we just didn't think of putting anything behind the box because it wasn't important. And then we found out that the kids get really frustrated if you don't ever show them what's behind the box.
It wasn't important to us, but it was really important to them.
So now we have something behind the box. But one way you could do this is you could do it in a Guess My Way game. So let's play Guess My Way.
Okay, so here's how Guess My Way works. So if you've ever done it before, but if you haven't, it's really fun. You just say, so I have, there's something behind the box. My boat's floating at sea level. What do you think's behind the box? Make a guess.
Maybe 3 floats and 3 anchors.
That is a great way to make my boat float at 0, but it's not my way.
You try another one?
Yeah, try another one.
Maybe there's nothing. Maybe there's nothing behind the box.
Yes, like my boat could be empty, and that would have it float at 0. That's a great way to make 0, but it's not my way.
How about 2 floats and 2 anchors?
There you go. That's my way. That's how you play it. So, you can't, on this one, because you have to make it in advance, you can't cheat.
Yeah.
When I play this with other things, I will often, if someone guesses it right away, I will change it to make it more interesting. But you can just have a couple prepared in case someone guesses really well right away. But that's how you play. And so they still get to see what's behind the box, but they get to develop this idea that there's lots of different ways it could be at 0. And then you still need that follow-up conversation about, okay, folks, what I'm saying right now is this is 0. It's not becoming 0, it is 0. This is different, this is new, this is exciting.
And
all right, so that's one.
A connection to make here is that the boat is floating at sea level for all of those situations. If there's nothing in the boat's floating at sea level. The boat's floating at 0. If there's 3 floats and 3 anchors, the boat's floating at 0. So 3 floats and 3 anchors is 0. So we have another example here. And just before I go on to that, you see the link at the bottom. We have a Google site which has lots of stuff about floats and anchors, and it also has the examples on your handout, which these come from, and some other examples, lots of other examples that we use with students for how to help build some of these ideas.
So you can steal all those, and it has like blank boat pictures and stuff, so you can make them and put them into smartboard slides and stuff, so pretty easy to make.
So here's a slight variation on the what's behind the box game. In the what's behind the box game, there's lots of answers, right? There's actually an infinite number of possibilities for what could be behind the box. In this one, we have a mystery cargo again, but in this case, we tell them how many pieces of cargo there are. So this one's a little bit, more algebraic in how you have to think about it. The kids have to think, well, I know it's floating at sea level, so I know it's got to be balanced. I've got to have an equal number of floats and an equal number of anchors. That must mean that there must be 2 floats and 2 anchors. That brings us to one of our favorite questions, which we ask, and oftentimes,
I think it's on the handout too.
Yeah, and oftentimes we get feedback and they say, "Oh, you made a mistake on this one." No, you didn't. So here's the question here: What's this mystery cargo? And the important thing here is that 0 represents this idea of balance. Now, it represents not nothing; it represents equal numbers of floats and anchors, right? So when you look at this, there's a little bit of dissonance. We think, well, how can we have equal numbers of floats and anchors, right? So but we do this on purpose. We want to bring out that idea. And kids get great answers to this. Kids will, they'll say the thing that you expect, which is it's impossible. But then they'll say creative things like, well, maybe it's one float and one anchor, and one which is half a float and half an anchor, right? So then we start getting into fraction ideas with it. So again, these activities are on that site, Google site, if you're interested in downloading them. All right. So Christy, you were telling us a story about why the additive inverse is transformative, and I think I'm starting to see.
All right.
But I
Ready? There's more. There's more. Okay. So first, so change is 0, right? So that's big. Pretty big. Seems like it'd be enough, but it's not. All right. So whole numbers. You get this picture in your mind with whole numbers of sort of piles that grow or that could shrink if you're going down. And again, that idea of sort of one-to-one correspondence. 3 apples and 3 pencils and 3 chairs all be matched up to all that 3-ness in common. And that, kids have spent lots of years of elementary school developing that mental image around what numbers are. So what they need, we're going to have a picture here to talk about integers. We want to think, how could I make a picture that would really capture what integers are? And this is kind of our picture around whole numbers. We have to think, what would a picture around integers look like? So I'm actually going to give you a second to think about that, and tell your neighbor if you want. What do you imagine? Like, what would you picture here that integers might look like?
People are cheating.
People are cheating and looking ahead. That's okay. I'll show you. We think they need a whole new picture, right? Integers are different. So here's the picture that we have. And we're going to give you a second to process this. So go ahead and talk to your neighbor about that if you want. What do you think we're saying? What does this mean to you? What's going on with this picture? So we'll give you a minute to think about that.
Well,
I know. I was waiting. I set you up like that. All right, so this is a picture that Erin and I have been working on for a while, like trying to figure out like how would we picture this, and how do we capture some things that are true about the integers that aren't true about whole numbers. And we're really thinking a lot about really trying to get that idea of opposites in there, so we can see those floats and that anchor in there to be those opposites. And when we first started talking about this, we actually were thinking about that picture on the left. And we were thinking like, oh yeah, you could have the sort of floats go up and the anchors go up, and you're sort of both counting them. But we went with the picture on the right for a couple reasons. And the first one is that in that picture on the left, 0 is still nothing. But 0 isn't nothing in the integers. Like part of the whole amazing thing about integers is that actually 0 it can be balanced. You can have 100 and a negative 100, and those are going to combine, and those are balanced at 0. They're 0, and that's a big idea. So we wanted to capture that idea in there. And so what we picture with this is the idea of, big math word here, equivalence classes. But it's really the idea that every number, every integer, has an infinite number of unique but equivalent representations. And that's a really big thing. So it doesn't just change 0. It actually changes all the numbers. And so like 3 could be like 3 floats, but it could also be like 4 floats and an anchor, or like, what is that, 7 floats and 4 anchors. That 3 can have a lot of different representations that look different, but actually have the same value.
Right. So again, let me see if I'm understanding this. You got 3 floats, and then you've got some float anchor pairs, and those float anchor pairs on the right there, they combine and disappear, and we're left with 3. So that's why it becomes 3.
So that's how you're making that equivalence, right? Like the
Right,
idea
yeah.
that they combine, they go away, it makes me,
Right.
and just like with 0, we'd say no.
Oh, I
That's the big change, right? That this doesn't become 3 after these go away. This doesn't become 3 after these go away. That's that whole number idea that 3 has to look like 3 things. In the integers, 3 can look like any of these. And you really need that idea for this to work out, but also it's the additive inverse. If you could just have 3 always looking exactly like 3, you'd be fine with the whole numbers. Whole numbers do that really well. You don't need a new set of numbers to do it. This equivalence idea, it's huge. Okay? Awestruck cat moment about equivalence. All of these are 3. They don't become 3. They really are 3 right now on the page. Is the sales pitch you got to give your kids? Not they're going to become 3, because that stays with their whole number ideas. And it doesn't help them see what's so powerful and transformative about the additive inverse. That you can pick any version of 3 that you want anytime you want isn't illegal in math. It's actually the thing you do. And we use it a lot. It allows us to solve a lot of problems that we can't solve with whole numbers. And you use it in, it's what makes that like 3 plus 0, not a very interesting question, equals 3. Why you add 0 becomes interesting when you can add it and it looks in a different form. Similar, just like with,
It's like when we complete the square.
yeah,
When you're trying to factor quadratic and you want to use the complete square technique, you add and subtract. Same thing. You're adding nothing. You're adding not adding nothing. You're adding 0, but you're adding 0 in a new form.
so 0 that looks like 9 plus negative 9. And as a former like algebra teacher, I will tell you, kids have that same like, what? Look, when you're like, no, that's really 0. Because 0 feels to them like it should be nothing, but really we're saying, no, 0 can be any of these forms. 0 is different when you work with integers. And this is a big, big moment that we want them to have and really empowering mathematically for it. So, all right, so how do we help students make sense of numbers like equivalence classes? I'll turn it back to you here. So we've got some more activities that do it, similar to ones you just saw.
Okay, yeah. So one way, again, we use similar strategies we used before, where before we had the votes situated at 0. Now we put the vote at a different position and ask the students, what's wrong with this picture? And first we identify what the issue is. And there's 2 ways actually to frame the issue. One way is to say that the vote is in the wrong place, or the other way is to say that the vote has the wrong cargo. Either of those are fine. But then we ask the kids to fix it, to find a way to fix it. And you could fix it by changing the cargo, or you could fix it by moving the vote to the right position. But those are different ways. And then we ask them to fix it in multiple different ways so that we can get to this idea of you can represent numbers. You can represent a number in multiple ways. They don't have this unique representation anymore. And again, we can use the similar, guess my way with the what's behind the box, but this time with the vote at a couple feet above or below sea level to make it a little bit different, right? And again, we try to ask the kids, how can you represent this position in multiple different ways? How can you put floats and anchors together to have the boat float at a certain spot in multiple different ways?
So can I show? So I'll just pass this around a second. So on the website, we actually have a game that goes with this. You can play with and things. But you can also just use the manipulatives from it. So these are all, we made it so you can just easily print it. You have to find transparency paper. A little bit harder, but you can print the boat on it. So I'll pass it around and you can make the little float anchors. We bought a circle cutout from Michael's so that we can make pretty circles. So all of these are there and you can use them. And so we really do have kids just try to make it float up and down and say, make your boat float at 0 or 3, put stuff in your boat. What could you now put something different in, put something different than your neighbor, just try it in multiple ways. So we do have the hands-on pieces to do it and find that it's pretty, it works out pretty well.
Like to use this. Okay, so we're sort of focusing in on some of these important properties of the integers that set them apart from the whole numbers. And we just put them together in a list for you. So every integer has an opposite. That's a really important idea. That's related to this additive inverse idea. There's no least or greatest element anymore. 0 for the whole numbers was the least element. Right? We couldn't go any lower than 0. But now that idea is gone. Now we have no least element. Adding 1 still creates the next whole number. We also have this idea of subtracting 1 creates the previous integer. And 0 now represents not nothing, but 0 represents balance. And every number, including 0, has many multiple representations. multiplication. Those are the important features, right? And we were trying to tell you that, at the beginning, we're going to transform the way you think about integers. Here's a list of the awesome properties of integers. Are you blown away?
So here's the thing. We
Maybe
think
not.
that if you just tell the kids this list, that they also, even though it's really exciting, that they're going to be like, yeah, okay, like that's good. But we really feel like you got to really sell it. So here's what we'd rather have.
It's a slow burn.
Okay. We wanted to feel like when they learned about this additive inverse idea, when they learned about integers, it has given them power that they never had before. They can do things they could never do before. It has empowered them in some way to solve new problems, new things. And so our question is, we have these ones to help make sense of some of those hard parts, but how do we really help kids really feel this power? How do we help them feel empowered by the integers? So our first thing that we'd say is that you should start with a context that lets them experience the power of the additive inverse. And that's all those early ones that we talked about. The part of the problem here is if they don't have the additive inverse sort of in that model, they're not going to really experience the power of the additive inverse when they use it. So this is a problem with temperature. It's not that temperature is a terrible model. It's not that you can never use it. But if you want to convince kids that integers are amazing and that integers are powerful, you got to talk about the additive inverse. And temperature doesn't really have it, because even though like 1 and -1 are on opposite sides of 0, 1 degree is not really the opposite of -1 degree. Really bad joke. It's like, no, they're just both really cold. But they don't have that oppositeness that we really want kids to be able to experience and feel, and they don't also have that multiple representation idea. There's not lots of different ways we think of -1 degrees. And they need that in order to really experience and understand why we have a new set of numbers and why they're useful and what we're going to do with them. And so it's not that you can't use other models. It's not that they're terrible. It's just that if you really want them to make sense of it, you should also use a model that uses the additive inverse. Floats and anchors is one we like. There's others you can use. And then the next thing you should do is you should use that to solve some problems they couldn't solve before. Solve some things in a reasonable and meaningful way that you couldn't solve with the whole numbers. So in the whole numbers, addition is closed. You can solve all the addition problems. But subtraction's not. There are subtraction problems you cannot solve in the whole numbers. But you can solve every problem, every subtraction problem in the integers. So if it starts as an integer subtraction problem, the answer will be in the integers. And that's what we really want to do. We want to give them the power to solve those kind of problems they couldn't before.
Okay, so let's take a concrete example here and work through how to solve 3 minus -2 equals 5. That's right? Okay.
Yeah, so can we pause for a second and let them just think for a minute how they might do it?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So take a second. How would you talk through 3 minus -2 equals 5? How would you help students make sense of that?
Using floats and anchors. I feel like this is the Andrew ability even though it's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So you had a second to think about it. So let's talk about how we might do this, right? So 3 minus -2 equals 5. So the first thing we think, okay, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to start at 3. We're going to start at 3 with maybe 3 floats in the middle, right? And this is good. And now, what does minus -2 mean to us, right? What does minus -2 mean? Well, subtraction is sort of taking away something. So we're taking away something. And what are we taking away? Well, we've seen that -2 anchors represent negative numbers. So in this case, we're taking away -2 anchors, right? But so far, we're still within the whole numbers because we're thinking we've got 3 and we don't see any anchors, right? But now we remember, wait a second. We just learned that the integers are different, that we can represent the integers different. We have a new picture of integers. So what we're going to do, instead of thinking of 3 as just a whole number, just 3 floats, we're going to think of 3 as an integer. And when we think of it as an integer, we see all those float anchor pairs, as many as we want, as many as we need, right? We've got 3 excess floats, and then we've got all these float anchor pairs underneath.
And this is a huge thing, right? To imagine that 3, even though it's 3 positives, really has negatives available to you at any time. They're really there all along. You can use them whenever they're there. That's a huge idea. And it is a difference between whole numbers and integers. Whole numbers, 3 is 3. But in integers, there's lots of different representations. In particular, what the opposite thing gives you is it's sort of like they're there. They're sort of always there, lurking, but ready to be used.
So we're changing the way we're thinking about this problem. We're thinking about it in terms of integers. We've got this picture of integers, and now we have no problem. The problem says start at 3, take away 2 anchors. We've got lots of them. We take away 2, we remove 2. What does that leave us? Well, it leaves us this picture where we've got all of our float anchor pairs going off, and then we've got 5 excess floats. That causes the boat to rise up, and we end at 5, right? So that's how we can work through this problem, thinking about it in terms of integers, thinking about it in terms of subtraction, rather than thinking about it in terms of addition.
And one of the big things, if you go back down, that really this lets us do is what we just saw right there, is that we can make sense of, in the whole numbers, subtraction is always going to make smaller, because the only thing you can take out will always cause it to just go down. But in the integers, because of opposites, you can take things out that have an effect of making it go up. So subtraction now can make larger, and being able to do something with that additive inverse is what lets students really see that subtraction, that removing something, can have the effect of going up. And they really need to see that removing as going up in order to really make sense of that in here. And you can do it, but you need the additive inverse to make that happen. Okay, but what about, so here's the question. The question that we have a lot of times is, what about changing subtraction into addition? Right? So, like, we know these two are equivalent. Addition's a lot easier for students. They do a lot better with this one. Why not, Aaron? Right? Addition's so great. Right? Isn't it? I mean, addition is so much easier. It's a really, kids do a lot better with addition. So why would we not just tell them, okay, fine, you can do it this way, but really, look, you can change your problems into addition.
But, let's see, Christy, joining and removing are not the same thing. Adding and subtracting are not the same thing. Subtraction is its own operation. It has a meaning. We can't just ignore it and say, forget all this idea of subtraction. We're only going to do addition for the rest of your life. That's not being fair to the kids. And it's also not true mathematically, right? So let's take a look at these two problems. Here we've taken the problem 3 minus negative 2, 3 minus negative 2, and we've rewritten it. And I want you to watch. We're going to work through both of them in the same way. So here we're picturing it in a whole number way, and here we're picturing it in the new integer way we want to think about it, right? So 3 plus 2, over here, we just add 2 floats. But again, we're adding something to the boat. Here, we're removing something. The problem started with removal. This stays true to that problem. We're removing something from the boat. In both cases, we end up with an excess of 5 floats, and the boat ends up at positive 5. But the difference here is that this one does it in an addition, or through addition, and this one does it actually through subtraction. Now, why is this important? We're not saying that we don't want kids to know that addition and subtraction, or this addition of the opposite and subtraction are equivalent. That's a really important idea. But if we just tell them that idea, it's going to be meaningless. If we let them develop both ways of understanding it, both ways of understanding addition makes something go up, and then subtracting a negative makes something go up, removing a negative makes something go up, and then they can see, oh wait, those have the equivalent effects, then they can make that connection on their own. And that connection can be really meaningful. And then they can use it whenever they need to. They can substitute, they can swap addition and subtraction when they need to, if they've made a meaningful connection.
And so one thing I got to do is I got to interview some pre-service teachers about integers and things they knew about them. And one of the things that really came out of that was that students who really have struggled with math, really consistently, one of the things they said is, one of the things they didn't like about math is that it didn't make sense. And the example they gave me every single time was how subtracting negatives makes things larger. And then we read like a blog where someone wrote about that, like randomly. is this a really big moment. Just like those stories where we're telling impossible situations that math doesn't need to solve, the same thing that we do is we say, hey, look, subtraction just turns into addition. Not a subtraction and addition now can have equivalent expressions, but rather it turns into addition. We're telling kids something that they think, like, this does not make sense. And it does, like, subtraction really does make sense here. It's important. And it is equivalent to an addition situation. But when we just try to elide over that and say, look, you can just do this instead. There's no such thing as subtraction. A lot of kids take away from that. Oh, math is just crazy. Math does not make sense. People give you problems that no one needs to solve, and then they tell you subtraction is addition, and then they're going to tell you multiplication and division are the same, and there's all kinds of crazy things that happen. We really want them to be able to have time to make sense of that idea so that they understand it, because it is powerful, and it's a new idea, but they need some time to do it, and just kind of swooping right into, look, they're the same, doesn't really let them make sense of this.
So we have some ideas on how you can help develop that idea of that these are equivalent that these have equivalent actions, as we mentioned before. So one thought would be to start a math fight. So you could construct a situation like this where one student says that 3 minus negative 2 is equal to 3 plus 2, and then another student could disagree, and you could have them sort of argue one way or the other, right? Who do you agree with and why? We could use the floats and anchors model to model both situations, just like we showed on the board there, to show how they result in the same effect. And that's actually something that the kids pretty quickly realize, that adding a float and removing an anchor have the same effect on the boat. That's a very intuitive thing for them. The hard thing is helping them to connect that to the arithmetic operations that we're trying to teach them, right? And then we also have just ask them about the connections and to see, like, to extrapolate from a simple rule. So we have, here's one example where 3 plus 2 equals 5 and 3 minus negative 2 equals 5. What if it were two different numbers? Would it still work? When does it work? Does it always work? Having them generalize towards a rule. So those are things we think can help to build to that important connection that the two expressions are equivalent. But we need to give them time to explore them each in their own way. All right.
All right. So for us, if you take one thing away from this session, we really hope, we hope you take more than one thing away. And if you want to talk to us about integers, we would love to talk about it because we really do love them. But if you take one thing away, we really hope that you take away this idea that the added inverse is an amazed kitty moment, and that you should sell it to your kids with that same amazed kitty moment, and that they need you to sell it to them like that, because it's easy to sort of be like, oh, I guess it's not such a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's a really big deal, and it does change things they know about number, and it changes things in really useful ways. That's why we have a whole new set of numbers, because it's useful, and we want them to know that, and we really love using this particular model. We found that it really does help those conversations happen. But like we said, there are other things you can do with these models too. I want to bring one thing quick to say, yes, we know that you can do subtraction as the difference between two things as well as just subtraction as removal. We stick with subtraction as removal a lot right here when we do it because kids come to that with a very strong subtraction as removal idea. But if you would like to hear some more about some ideas, including ways you can use this to do subtraction as difference, there's a session tomorrow, apparently from 9:25 to 10:55 in Gooseberry Falls 1, where some teachers and folks from Minneapolis work together to create a whole unit around this context for their students, and they're going to tell you something about it and how it works. So if you want to see a little bit about that, you can hear more about it. We're happy to talk about it. But there'll be some more stuff tomorrow if you're interested in hearing more about that. So, other questions? All right, well, thank you for coming. Feel free to come and ask us about it. But